the Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show on podcast.
If I think back to what led up to my diagnosis, I know in a few months prior I'd been feeling quite tired in the evenings, but I didn't give it much thought. Things were busy at work, stuff was busy at home, and I didn't feel unwell. I just felt a bit more tired than usual. And everything really happened, really changed on that night that I went out to play football. If anything, I'd felt quite well that day. I'd felt quite bright. I'd felt quite energetic. Went out to play football, and then everything just changed in an instant. It was like being hit by lightning, because all of my senses completely switched in a moment. I had this horrible kind of sound I could hear. I could taste something that wasn't in my mouth, a horrible chemically taste. I could smell that same chemically smell. I could tell my senses were not quite right. I had a very strong sense of deja vu and depersonalization, which we now know, and I didn't at the time because I didn't know that they were symptoms of a seizure. And so I was effectively having a seizure on the football pitch, but just stood there, eyes wide open, wondering what was happening to me. And then over that weekend that followed that Thursday night, I had about 15 more seizures. Then that led to having a CT scan. At that time, it was described me as a lesion. So I was sent away, and with all the scans and all the details sent across to the neuro-oncology team. And when I was told that the scans and my information was being sent to the neuro-oncology team was the time I knew, actually, it's not really a lesion, is it? It's a tumour. That, to me, it sounds much more serious as a description of what they had found. That led into the surgery, and the surgery for the biopsy. The biopsies then came back with a diagnosis of an astrocytoma. It's predominantly grade 2, but it has some features that were of concern to the pathologists, where they thought it would be beneficial to me to treat it as a grade 3 and go through all the oncological treatments now rather than wait, because they were like, we believe it is developing. And the exact words that were used by one of the oncologists in London was, we would call this a grade 2.5. It is of a lower grade, and therefore we think we can control this for a number of years versus the slightly harsher treatment plans that come with a grade 3. And they're trying to balance those two things. For me, it was better to feel like they were going to be more cautious. And if there was anything that was worrying, let's treat it and treat it now, rather than wait for it to get worse, which was what the other reality for me was, which was, it's very significant, it's very extensive, it's going to get worse, we just don't know when. I think overall, I was in some ways just, let's just get on with the treatment. I'm not worried about the numbers. If you think there's something concerning that's going to get worse here, let's treat it as soon as we possibly can. My brain surgery operation was about a month after my first symptoms, maybe 5 weeks, and they were a very hard few weeks. Because at that point you've got something very serious. You still don't know what that really means. And so that was a very difficult time, because it's just so uncertain. We were told, even before the surgery, that it would be incurable and that they wouldn't be able to remove it all. The two things everybody asks you, did they take it all away? And we knew before the surgery had taken place that wouldn't be the case. And so I knew very quickly I felt like I knew very quickly how I would have to approach this with family members, and specifically how I'd have to approach this with the children. My wife very much worked as a team in terms of how we communicated with our children and with our family. And it was, to be honest as what I could be with my adult family members, but also to explain that in a very sensitive way with the children, which was not that I was going to die, but that I would live with this for the rest of my life, and not to put a time frame on that at that point, because we didn't know. And so that wasn't information I could share because I didn't know myself. And so really it was just about explaining to people that I will live with this for the rest of my life. There's a plan for surgery, and then we'll find out more. And then we'll be able to make another plan. And that plan will include radiotherapy and chemotherapy whenever is the most effective time to have them. I tried to understand the procedure. So what was literally going to happen? Would I be awake? Would I be asleep? How would they access my brain? How would they access it safely? The types of equipment they would use, the types of imaging they would use to make sure they weren't causing more damage than they had to, and those kinds of things. Understanding, if you like, the basic science behind what is an extremely complex procedure. So just had to focus on what would be happening, how would everybody be cared for at home, what our family arrangements would be at that time, how long would I be in hospital, how quickly would I be able to come home. It was coming up to Christmas at that point as well, so that factored a lot into the kind of the planning, the surgery, and what happened immediately after. I'd had some really good discussions with the anaesthetist, and I'd had some really good discussions with my surgeon in the run-up to the day, and they both made a promise to me. They probably shouldn't have done, but they did. They said, I promise nothing will happen to you. We promise that this is going to go to plan. And so I held them to that promise. I remember I had to arrive at the hospital really early in the morning, about 7 a.m. I was going to be the only neurosurgery that day because they knew it was going to take a really long time. So I was the only patient in that theatre that day. I remember getting to the hospital and feeling very mixed because I knew what was going to happen. I knew the steps that I would have to go through, and I knew what would happen in the operating theatre. So it was mixed in the sense of that's very scary, but also I knew that it had to happen. It was going to help me. It was going to help prolong my life, and I knew that it would help us make a plan for what treatments I could have next. I knew that if they got a good proportion of the tumour out, that would give me more years. And it was mixed. I was scared. I knew it had to happen, and that gave me the determination and the motivation to climb up onto the bed and to push me through the doors into the anaesthetic room. As that was happening, my only thought was, in a minute, you'll be asleep, and then next thing you know, you'll be awake. And once you're awake, it's done. And so I really focused on that thought of like, you won't know, and then you'll be awake and it's over. I remember holding the hand of the anaesthetist as they said, we're going to put you to sleep now. And the next thing I knew, my eyes were open. And I could see that very same anaesthetist. And they said, it's finished. You're safe. My main worry about waking up was I would wake up and I wouldn't know where I was. I wouldn't know who I was. And I would be a different person. And that's something no one could have predicted, so to speak. They knew I had faith that they wouldn't harm me. And so on waking up, that was my main thought. Not the thought of waking up at all. It was the thought of I've woken up and I still feel like me. I remember seeing the surgeon that night. He just smiled. And I just said, how much did you get? And he said, I knew you were going to ask me that question. And I told you before I wouldn't be able to answer you now, today. But he said, everything went to plan. We did the best we could, and we believe we've done a good job. And I still remember that smile on his face as he was having a conversation he absolutely expected to have with me in that moment. And I held on to that again. I held on to his every word of he's done a good job. And as that night wore on, probably a combination of all the pain relief and the sheer relief of waking up and still knowing who I was, I think it was just as well. I was quite heavily medicated because for all the other staff and patients, I think I'd have been running up and down the halls of the hospital telling everybody I've done it. But the reality of what recovery from brain surgery really means kicks in quite quickly over the following days. So yeah, at that point, it was just the relief that I felt like I've been told they've done the right thing, they've done a good job, everything gone to plan. I still feel like me. And I awaited the results of the biopsy, which took a good few weeks. So I had the surgery at the end of November. I didn't get my official results until early in January. Part of that was the Christmas break, because obviously services and things are slower around that time of year. There's lots of things close down and go slower. And so it was very long and it was very difficult. We had some early information just before Christmas to say, we think it's an astrocytoma. We think it's of a lower grade. The lower grade was a very positive thing to hear. So that kind of gave us a little bit of buoyancy over the Christmas period. But then in January, you found out, yes, it is of a lower grade on the whole, but there are some concerning features here. And we need to have a very low threshold for oncology treatment. And as soon as that comes, you're preparing yourself for radiotherapy, chemotherapy, a combination of both. And it came back down to earth very quickly after the Christmas period. So once we found out what the tumour was exactly, I was brought into hospital to speak to the oncology team, and they very carefully explained that we now know what this is, and we have a very clear plan of how we're going to try to treat. We knew at that point anyway that it wasn't going to be curative. So I was very open in talking to them about what the prognosis would be, what would be the objective of each different part of treatment, what would we hope to see at the end of those treatments. And that also, the quality of life question was very strong in my mind at that point of, we can do this stuff, but I need to know the consequences of any of these treatments. So they were very good with me about that. And we then worked together to look at how things would pan out over a number of months, making sure I could recover from the surgery before I go into radiotherapy. It was scary. They were going to push high doses of radiation through my brain. And there was that bit of me that just said, what if you don't know who you are anymore? What if you don't remember things? What if you don't work anymore? Nothing works properly anymore. So that was the negative side of things. The positive side of things was, this is going to do something. This is going to help me. This is going to be something that I'm very active in participating in. Unlike surgery, where you lay down and broadly, for me, I went to sleep. I was not active. I was it just happened. Whereas with the radiotherapy, I was getting up every day. I knew I'd have to get up every day, get there, get on the treatment table, be awake, see it happening, feeling it happening, and then go again the next day, look after myself in between. So it was I felt very productive. I felt very engaged in my care. And that was for me, the balancing. That was the thing I would use to balance the fear, the unknown of what the treatment would do and the side effects that it would bring. So it was trying to balance those two things. I felt engaged in my care. And actually a lot of that was enabled by the staff and the hard work that they put in every day for all the patients. It was a bit like having a job. For those 6 weeks, I went into the same building through the same door every day of the week, Monday to Friday, saw the same faces to greet me. They knew my name and I knew their name. And actually there's a familiarity in that pattern that most of us only experience through work. And they were completely amazing. And I was very emotional at the end of my treatment to not be coming back. And not that I wanted to have more sessions on the table, but I didn't want to lose that sense of connection I had to that group of people who had invested so much in me by looking after me. And that was a very strange experience in healthcare, I think, that most people, we might see our GP once every few months or even once a year. And if you go into a hospital or you call an ambulance, you will probably see that member of staff once in your whole lifetime. And actually, in my experience of radiotherapy, it's that I got to see this same group of people every day for 6 weeks. And they were as much a part of my life as, for those 6 weeks as anybody else. And so that's quite intense emotionally, because you also balancing your own emotions about what's happening to you in terms of the treatment. Is it working? My side effects? And so they really add to that mixture, but it was positive. That was a positive addition to that mixture at that time. And so I would say for anyone else that's having a radiotherapy treatments, it's the staff are there for you. Have the time, try and take the time and find the ways to engage with them and understand how they can help you better, whether it's having a smile and a joke with you as you get into the machine, or whether it's an arm around you because that day you're really terrified and not feeling great. They're there for you and you can engage them in that way. And I think that's really important because actually they thrive on that. They really do. I've always been quite an open person. And so with the children, they knew that I was in radiotherapeutic treatment. It became part of what we talked about every evening. They said, "Oh, who's looked after you today?" And I would always make sure I told them the name of the member of staff. And they would always talk about, were you in for long today? And we so allowed them to be engaged with what was happening, to take away for them the fear of the unknown of, well, Dad leaves the house and I don't know what happens to him and then he comes back. So trying to be open and explain what's happening and involve them as much as possible in what my daily experience was. And that also brought positivity to it because it felt like it wasn't a secret. It felt like it was something that we were in together as a family, and their strength and their resilience gave me strength and resilience, and vice versa too. Obviously I couldn't work just because of the routine of having to get to the hospital and back and have the right rest and stuff like that. But for me, each day we ticked off the number of the appointment on the list. We put a cross through the date and we counted down each day, and we counted up as well. Today we've done 5. That means there's 25 to go. So now I'm at 10. That means there's only 20 to go. Every day became an achievement. There's a famous saying by Einstein that is, if you can't explain it to someone else, you don't understand it yourself. And actually having to explain something like radiotherapy to a young child, a primary school age child, is pretty tricky unless you really understand it. I think it has helped in some ways having children. It's that they can bring and the normality that they can bring, but also in order to keep them informed and engaged with what is happening and not feeling like they are an outsider to what your experience is, you have to find ways to explain it. And to do that, you have to understand for yourself first. The really tricky part of it, almost, I look too well. And the number of people that say to me, "You're looking great, Matt." And my answer to them is what's on the inside that counts. So it is how you feel. And you have to explain to them, actually, you know what, today I really feel like I can't think about some things. I feel like I don't want to make a decision. It feels like I just need to really rest. But actually, I know at the same time, they're just trying to be positive. They're trying to encourage you to keep going. And so you have to take in every moment, in every conversation, in every situation, you take what you can in terms of the positivity from it. And you use that as the fuel, which is, you know what, you think I'm looking great? I'm going to look even better next time, because I'm not just going to look good. I'm going to be doing good, and I'm going to be feeling good. And so for me, that's what I don't take, if you like, a negative from their misunderstanding. I take the positive from, they still see me. They don't see a different person that's been impaired by their treatment. They see me for who I was and who I still am. And so that's very motivating, very kind of reassuring, actually, this far into treatment. Sometimes family members have asked me, "How do you feel today?" And my only answer is, I can't even explain it. I don't have the words to explain how I feel, because sometimes I genuinely don't know what I'm feeling. It's the mixture of the anxiety with physical symptoms, with emotional symptoms, all at once. They become one big symptom that is almost a thing in its own right. And you can't explain those things. And when someone else has had similar treatments, similar time, on the back of other similar treatments, I would say through interacting with people in the brain tumour community, I found some really good friends, actually, who one of them particularly, he refers to our friendship as a cruel connection. Because actually what we've both been through it's inherently cruel, but what we found is a connection through it. And I think it sums it up perfectly. The club that no one wants to be in. It's the cruelest connection of them all. Another friend who was introduced to me through, if you like, some of my friends in, let's call it in real life, who knew of a colleague at work who had a very similar diagnosis at a very similar time. And the first thing I said to them, they were like, we can't believe it. It sounds like it's happening again. And I said, give them my number. If they need me, I'm there. And actually, we've become very close friends. So our treatment plan is pretty much in parallel. So we are experiencing this. This is live. We've got live chat support, and it's not a bot. It's happening in real life to both of us at the same time. And that's invaluable because we have chemo on the same days. And wake up and say, how are you feeling this morning? When actually our experience is pretty similar, and we can motivate each other and validate each other every day and just say, yeah, I've got that feeling again. I just feel so foggy, or I just feel so nauseous, or whatever it is. You can just say, oh, I know that feeling. You'll be all right.
This is the Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show. It's a show full of informative chat and inspirational messages. The Aunty and Brain Tumours talk show on podcast.